Did Buckingham Palace or Prince William set a trap for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, and were they gullible enough to fall into it?
You guys will not believe what just dropped.
I've got some troubling news about England's royal family.
After months of relative quiet, reports are surfacing that King Charles has done something that will change everything for Prince Harry and Meghan's children. People thought the worst was behind them. They thought the family was moving forward. But this new development proves that behind closed doors, things are worse than anyone imagined. And the response from Harry and Meghan? Completely unexpected.
Again, I have to be careful what I say, but that I won't be able to show, my children my homeland.
Their reaction has sparked even more controversy than the original decision. So what really happened here? And more importantly, what does this mean for the future of the royal family? Let's rewind for a second.
As pressure grows on the UK Parliament, King Charles and Prince William to take action on all the wayward royals.
For years, the public has watched this family drama unfold like a slow-motion car crash. Harry and Meghan stepped back from royal duties. They moved to California. They did the Oprah interview. They launched legal battles against the British press. Through all of that, most people assumed the worst was behind them. Sure, there were still tensions, but it felt like everyone was just trying to move on. The royal family kept doing their thing. Harry and Meghan built their new life in America. It seemed like an uneasy peace had settled in. But this new report changes everything. It suggests that behind closed doors, the relationship between Charles and his son has gotten even worse. And now, it is affecting the next generation.
I believe that Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet need to be stripped and removed from the line of succession.
Archie and Lilibet, Harry's two young children, are suddenly at the center of a constitutional controversy that most people did not see coming. Here is where it gets even stranger. According to palace insiders, King Charles reportedly made several attempts to see his grandchildren. Those efforts were turned down. Meghan, according to these same sources, still believes the royal family has not treated them fairly, and she is not about to let them back into her children's lives without serious changes. That has created a standoff. Charles wants access. Meghan is holding firm. And now, this decision about the line of succession has landed right in the middle of that tension. Some people are calling it retaliation. Others say it is just Charles protecting the institution. But no matter how you look at it, the timing feels deliberate. The question everyone is asking now is whether this move will bring the family closer to reconciliation or push them further apart than ever before.
Meghan views those two children as commercial assets, which is gross and awful.
You probably think that is the whole story, but it is not even close. Before we dive deeper into what actually happened, there is one question that keeps getting ignored in all the headlines. Can King Charles really remove Meghan's kids from the line of succession? It sounds straightforward, right? He is the king. He makes the rules. But the reality is way more complicated than that. And honestly, a lot of people, including some journalists covering this story, do not seem to understand how royal succession actually works. This is not some medieval system where the king waves his hand and changes the rules on a whim. There are laws, old laws, laws that have been tested, challenged, and reinforced over centuries. And those laws do not give the monarch nearly as much power as you would think. In fact, what most people do not realize is that the British monarchy operates under one of the most restrictive legal frameworks in the world when it comes to succession. To really understand what is happening now, you need to know how the line of succession even became what it is today.
One bill, and it would deal with Meghan and Harry, but also critically, P. Dinah, it would deal with Archie and Lily too.
Way back in early English history, there were no written rules. Kings were followed by their closest male relatives, and people just accepted it because the alternative was total chaos. It was all about bloodlines and keeping the kingdom stable. The idea of a king personally choosing who stayed in the line or who got kicked out, that was not even a thing. Succession happened naturally through family ties, and the country went along with it because any other system would have led to civil war. But over time, England went through some serious political conflicts, wars, religious disputes, power struggles, and Parliament decided they needed to step in. What started as a family tradition slowly turned into a legal system controlled by lawmakers, not royals. That shift caught a lot of people off guard back then, because it completely changed how royal authority worked. The king was no longer the ultimate decision maker about his own family's future. One of the biggest turning points came in 1689 with the Bill of Rights. This was not just a document about freedoms, it also created the first official legal rules around who could inherit the throne. It named specific people and also made it clear that Catholics could not become king or queen. For the first time, Parliament was openly shaping the line of succession through law, not leaving it up to the royal family. This was revolutionary at the time because it meant the monarchy had lost control over one of its most fundamental aspects: who would rule next.
Apparently, King Charles is not going to make a detour to go to Montecito, and it's unlikely that Harry will go and join him, because what will then happen, he will dominate the headline.
Then, in 1701, the Act of Settlement took things even further. It tightened the rules, made sure only Protestants could inherit, and put even more limits on the monarch's authority. After that, the idea of a king removing someone from the line became almost impossible. The power did not belong to the monarch anymore. Parliament had built a system that made succession a matter of national law, not royal preference. And here is the kicker. Those rules stayed in place for centuries. Remember this detail. It comes back later in a big way. Fast forward to the 2000s. Public attitudes started shifting, and Parliament decided the old succession rules did not reflect modern society anymore. That led to something unexpected: the Succession to the Crown Act of 2013. This law brought some major changes that actually surprised a lot of people who thought the royal system was stuck in the past. One of the biggest updates: the end of male preference primogeniture. Under the old rule, a younger son could skip ahead of an older daughter in the line of succession. The new law erased that. Now birth order matters more than gender. It was a quiet revolution that changed the future of the monarchy without most people even noticing.
Meghan and Markle are set to be left out in the cold, lots of people are saying. And basically because they are no longer working royals. That's the main sort of reason they're not.
Princess Charlotte, for example, holds her place in line ahead of her younger brother, Prince Louis, because of this change. Without it, Louis would have jumped ahead of her automatically. The 2013 Act also did something else that flew under the radar. It changed the rule that used to bar anyone who married a Catholic from inheriting the throne. For centuries, that rule had pushed people out of the line entirely, but the new law removed it. Marrying a Catholic no longer disqualifies you. At the same time, Parliament replaced the Royal Marriages Act of 1772, which had caused real problems in the past. That old law made marriages invalid unless the monarch approved them, and children from unapproved marriages were considered illegitimate. They could not inherit the crown. The 2013 Act got rid of that risk completely. Now, marriages do not need royal approval to be legitimate. These changes sound technical, but they are actually huge when you think about what they mean for royal families today. They represent a shift toward equality and modernization that many people thought would never happen within such an old institution. Now, here is where things get interesting.
I can reveal that a secret briefing document has been sent by Buckingham Palace.
Even with all these updates, one thing stayed exactly the same. The monarch still cannot personally remove anyone from the line of succession. That power belongs to Parliament, and Parliament alone. Looking back through history proves this over and over. One of the clearest examples came in 1936, when King Edward VIII wanted to give up the throne to Mary Wallis Simpson, an American divorcee. He could not just walk away. Parliament had to pass the Abdication Act to make it official. And that same law also removed his future children from the line of succession. Even Edward himself, an actual king, could not change his own position without Parliament's involvement. The entire government had to get involved, debates were held, and only then could the change happen. If that sounds unusual, just wait, because this pattern repeats every single time the question comes up. Any change to succession requires a legal process, not a royal command. And there is another layer most people do not know about. Because the British monarch is shared with several Commonwealth countries, those nations have to agree to succession changes as well. Laws in places like Canada, Australia, and New Zealand must align with changes made in the United Kingdom. This adds another huge layer of protection that prevents any one person, including the king, from messing with the succession line.
I think the palace and the machinery of the monarchy needs to take Harry and Meghan more seriously and make sure that Harry and Meghan's antics don't impact the future.
It is not just a British issue. It is an international constitutional agreement. When the 2013 Act was passed, it required approval from 16 different countries before it could take effect. That process took years to complete. That is why when people ask if Charles can remove Meghan's kids from the line, the answer is pretty straightforward. He cannot, not legally, not without Parliament, and not without multiple countries signing off on it. The system was designed specifically to prevent this kind of personal interference. But here is where it gets confusing for most people. Kings and queens do have some authority in other areas. They can issue documents called letters patent, which let them change someone's title, style, or honor. They can decide who gets called prince or princess. They can determine who uses the style His Royal Highness or Her Royal Highness. These changes happen fairly regularly and do not require Parliament at all. The monarch can make these decisions with the stroke of a pen, but, and this is crucial, these changes do not touch succession. A title is not the same as a legal right to inherit. Someone might lose their style or honor and still remain firmly in the line. The law makes a clear separation between personal rank and constitutional inheritance. This is where most of the confusion comes from when headlines start talking about removing people from succession. The media often blurs the line between titles and actual succession rights, making it seem like they are the same thing when they are completely different. A perfect example of this distinction is Prince Andrew. Even though he lost his military titles and the style His Royal Highness after his very public controversies, he was never removed from the line of succession. His place remains exactly where it was before everything went wrong. He is still technically eligible to inherit the throne, even though he has been pushed completely out of public life. He is currently 9th in line, and that has not changed despite everything that happened. This proves that titles can change, but succession rights stay the same unless Parliament decides otherwise. The monarchy cannot use personal authority to rearrange the future of the crown. Nobody expected what happened next, because when you apply the same legal framework to Harry's children, the whole story about Charles removing them from succession starts to fall apart. Keep this detail in mind. We will come back to this. So here's the truth that most headlines are missing. King Charles cannot legally remove Prince Harry's children from the line of succession. It is impossible. No matter how strained the relationship is between Charles and Harry, no matter how much the media speculates, no matter what private agreements might exist behind closed doors, the king simply does not have the legal authority to erase anyone's position in the succession. Only Parliament, along with agreement from Commonwealth realms, could do something like that. And historically, Parliament has only acted in extreme cases, treason, abdication, loyalty to enemy nations during wartime. Not private family disagreements, not personal grudges, not even serious scandals. The bar for Parliament to intervene is incredibly high, and nothing Harry or Meghan have done comes anywhere close to meeting that standard. But if Charles cannot actually remove them, then what is really happening here? This is where the story gets complicated, because the reports never said Charles removed them from succession. What they said was that he signed off on a rule about it. That word choice matters, because what likely happened is that Charles used his power over titles and styles, not succession itself. He can decide who gets called prince or princess. He can control who uses royal styles in official settings. Those are decisions the monarch makes without Parliament. And if Charles chose to clarify that Archie and Lilibet will not receive those titles or styles, that would be within his power. It would not change their place in the succession line at all, but it would change how they are publicly recognized. This is a subtle but powerful distinction that changes everything about how we understand this story. Here is why that matters. Titles carry weight. They come with expectations, visibility, security funding, and public duties. By not granting those titles, Charles is not removing Harry's children from succession, he is removing them from the public-facing machinery of the monarchy. It is a subtle but important distinction. They are still in line to inherit. Archie is currently 6th in line, and Lilibet is 7th. That has not changed and cannot change without an act of Parliament. They are just not being treated as working royals, and that decision might have been made for several reasons. Maybe Charles wants to slim down the monarchy. Maybe he is responding to Harry and Meghan's decision to step back. Maybe it is a message about boundaries, or maybe it is all of the above. But the headlines that made it sound like he legally erased them, that is not what happened. This is where things stopped making sense for a lot of people following the story. The media took a story about titles and turned it into a story about succession, and those are two completely different things. Once the reports came out, the reactions were immediate and intense. Harry and Meghan were reportedly upset by the move, which is not surprising. Even if the decision was technically about titles and not succession, it still feels like rejection. It is another way the institution has drawn a line between them and the rest of the family. For Meghan especially, this likely confirmed what she has been saying all along, that the royal family has not treated them fairly and is not interested in reconciliation. The decision, regardless of its legal technicalities, sends a clear message. Your children are not part of this. That has got to sting, no matter how you spin it. Sources close to the couple say they view this as yet another example of the family prioritizing tradition and public perception over personal relationships. But the public reaction was split. Some people sided with Charles, arguing that Harry and Meghan chose to leave royal life, so their children should not get royal treatment. They see it as a reasonable boundary. Why should Archie and Lilibet receive titles and privileges if their parents rejected the institution? These supporters point out that Harry and Meghan wanted financial independence and privacy, and you cannot have it both ways. Others saw it as cruel and petty, a grandfather punishing his grandchildren for their parents' decisions. Social media exploded with debates. Some accused Charles of racism, pointing back to Meghan's claims about concerns over Archie's skin color. Others defended him, saying this was about structure and duty, not personal feelings. The controversy reignited all the old arguments about whether the royal family had treated Meghan fairly from the beginning. Polls showed the British public was deeply divided, with opinions often splitting along generational lines. Meanwhile, reports also surfaced that Charles had tried multiple times to see Archie and Lilibet, and those efforts were rejected by Meghan. People close to the situation said she still felt the family had not apologized or changed their behavior, so she was not ready to give them access to her children. That added another layer to the conflict. Now it was not just about titles, it was about family access, trust, and whether reconciliation was even possible. Some saw Meghan's position as protective and justified. Others called it manipulative, accusing her of using the children as leverage. The palace stayed mostly silent, which only fueled more speculation. Quiet changes started appearing in official documents and royal communications, but no one from the family directly addressed the issue. That silence became its own kind of statement. Royal watchers noticed that the palace website was updated to reflect the new status, but no formal announcement was made. It was handled quietly, almost as if they hoped no one would notice. Looking at the bigger picture, this situation reveals something important about the modern monarchy. King Charles is trying to reshape the institution for a new era. He has talked publicly about wanting a slimmed-down monarchy, fewer people on the payroll, fewer people representing the crown, a more focused and efficient operation. In that context, the decision about Harry's children makes sense. They live in America. Their parents are not working royals. Giving them titles would create expectations and responsibilities that do not align with the family's current reality. From Charles's perspective, this might not be personal at all. It might just be practical. He wants a monarchy that looks more like the Scandinavian models, lean, efficient, and focused on core members who actually perform royal duties. But here's the problem with that logic. These decisions do not happen in a vacuum. Harry and Meghan have spent years publicly talking about how the institution failed to protect them, how they felt unsupported, and how racism played a role in their treatment. Against that backdrop, any decision that excludes their children looks like confirmation of everything they have been saying. It does not matter if Charles has legal or structural reasons. The optics are terrible. It makes him look like he is choosing the institution over his own family. And for a monarchy that is supposed to represent unity and tradition, that is a dangerous image to project. The long-term consequences of this could be significant. It deepens the rift between Harry and the rest of the family. It gives Meghan more ammunition in the court of public opinion, and it raises questions about what kind of grandfather Charles wants to be. Does he want to be remembered as the king who modernized the monarchy, or the grandfather who cut off his own grandchildren? Beyond the family drama, this also exposes the weird contradictions built into the British royal system. The monarchy is supposed to be about bloodlines and heritage, but it is actually controlled by laws and politics. A king can strip away someone's public identity, but he cannot change their legal inheritance. Titles mean everything and nothing at the same time. The whole system is designed to prevent abuse of power, but it also creates situations where personal relationships get tangled up in constitutional rules. These contradictions have existed for centuries, but they become more visible when family conflicts play out in public. And in the end, the story about King Charles removing Meghan's kids from succession was never really true. What is true is that he decided not to give them something they might have expected. That is a very different thing, but it is also the kind of decision that will echo for years, shaping how this chapter of royal history gets remembered and how the next generation sees their place in a family that is both deeply traditional and constantly evolving. The real question now is what happens next? Will Harry and Meghan accept this decision and move on, or will they continue to fight against what they see as unfair treatment? Will King Charles ever meet his grandchildren, or will the family remain divided across the Atlantic? And most importantly, what will Archie and Lilibet think about all of this when they are old enough to understand it? They are still in the line of succession, but without titles or royal support. They will grow up knowing they are connected to one of the most famous families in the world, but also knowing that family chose to keep them at a distance. That is a complicated legacy to inherit, and only time will tell how it shapes their relationship with their heritage and their place in history.